Good afternoon. My name's Bill Rice. I'm the founder and CEO of Kaleido Digital Marketing. We are a full-service agency focused primarily on digital marketing and more specifically on things that generate leads for your business. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the possibility of outsourcing your content marketing and why you might want to consider doing that, the advantages to it, and even if you decide not to necessarily outsource your content marketing or you want to build that as a core competency within your business, we're definitely going to give you some tools on how to make that more successful and again, how to make content marketing work the way that it should to generate leads for your business. So let's go ahead and do just a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today, just to make sure that you're in the right place and also to sort of orient your brain into the way that we're going to talk about content marketing today. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about what content marketing is and why it's so important. There's probably a good chance that you believe that it's important. That's why you're on the webinar. But I really want to flush out sort of the more mathematical and statistical basis for its importance to your business. Then I'm going to make sort of a contrarian claim and try to get you to buy into the fact that quite possibly marketing shouldn't be the top priority within your organization, meaning it shouldn't necessarily be a core competency within your business structure, and you shouldn't maybe apply as many of your internal resources to it. And we're going to talk about why I believe that and why possibly you should think about that. And then we're going to get deeper into why in-house content production often fails. Fails not only in execution, but also fails in strategically delivering the results and the outcomes that you're expecting. And then again, assuming that you buy into all this, and even if you don't, we're going to talk about how to outsource content in the right way. And wrapped up into that discussion is, of course, how to do content marketing the right way. So we're going to give you some tools there. And then ultimately, again, no matter how you decide to kind of come down in this argument at the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about how to do content marketing right. And again, give you some examples and some tools to be able to execute better, whether you're doing it in-house or you're outsourcing it to someone in particular. Very important, and this may be unlike some other webinars that you've been associated with or you've visited or listened to, but I absolutely do not want you to hold your questions to the end. I love the interaction. I love the discussion, and so throw those questions into your chat box on the GoToWebinar. And as those sort of make sense within the flow of the initial presentation, I'll go ahead and answer those and use them as examples and again, specifically address your questions along the way in the presentation. And in those cases where they don't necessarily flow into the conversation or the presentation, or potentially I'm going to cover them later, I may delay answering your question or even answer them at the end during the question and answer. My entire presentation will only be about 20 minutes, so there's going to be plenty of time afterwards to get into that Q&A, and I absolutely promise to answer every single question that's put in the chat box. And then for those people who are watching the recording and maybe not necessarily joining us live today, all of my contact information is on your screen now, and you are absolutely welcome to use any of that to reach out to me and ask specific questions about this presentation or content marketing in general, or for that matter, just in general digital marketing. We love to teach. I love to teach. I love to explain, and would love the opportunity to engage directly with you. I will always take that time. So again, you can email me, shoot me a note on Twitter. If you haven't signed up to the newsletter, you should absolutely do that. We give all kinds of information via the newsletter, and you'll also get updates on all of our future webinars. And then, I do actually give you my phone number. That's my direct line, and so I do pick that up whenever I'm available, and so I'd be more than happy to talk to you via phone as well. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get to the core content that we're going to talk about today. Why is content marketing important? Obviously, the internet itself is made up of a variety of different pieces of content just by its very virtue. It is a hyperlinking of content itself. But more importantly than all of that, the content that's on your website and your website itself are primary drivers in generating leads and creating inquiries to your business, providing credibility and trust for those to contact you. And then I've got a couple of stats here that are kind of really important to keep in mind. A lot of people do a core website and they don't really kind of go beyond the very basic description of what they do, or maybe some core offers, and they don't really expand out that content, or they don't create content over time. And as a result, they start to lose some of these primary drivers. So again, 50% of purchases are generally driven by some piece of content someone's seen, and probably 90, if you are producing content on your website, probably about 95% of your traffic is actually coming to some piece of content other than your homepage. Websites that have content, again, outside of those core sort of homepage sort of scenarios, have dynamically and exponentially more traffic in general. It creates increasing indexing and links because other people, other websites are using that as a resource, backlinking, and of course, all of that kind of works together to increase your search engine optimization, give you more organic traffic, make you less reliant on paid. So ultimately, having content, having things for people to see, to research, to learn more about your business, to link to other businesses, other organizations, to use as resources, ultimately all works together to increase your potential for generating leads. So ultimately, what should be your priorities? You can see in the agenda right off the bat, I kind of discounted marketing as being a core competency. Well, having been in the business of building startups and creating businesses and working with businesses that are trying to grow, I found over and over again the businesses that focus on two important core competencies are always the strongest. So those that put all of their effort, all of their in-house knowledge and resource into developing the absolutely best product possible in their marketplace, and then ultimately delivering that product or services out to the market via business development activities, those are obviously the most successful. Once you start to go outside of those two core competencies and build and apply resources within your organization to things outside of those two things, things start to get stretched, start to break down. So ultimately, my case is the top two priorities, and maybe the only two priorities in any business, should be focusing on creating the absolute best product in your market, and then ultimately getting that out into the marketplace and making those relationships business development. So as a result, you can notice that very obviously I left marketing out of that mix. So let me talk to you a little bit about why I leave marketing, at least in your first prioritization, outside of that core discipline and that core product building within your business. So why isn't marketing in that list? Well, inherently, if you break down the value proposition of your business and you break down literally what builds value and increases the economic value of your company, ultimately, you're never going to see somebody that says, hey, Google or Apple or anything along those lines is more valuable because of their marketing. No, they say it's more valuable because of the product that they deliver or the services that they deliver and the revenue that those things generate. But never is your actual marketing competency built into the valuation of any business. So that's the first and kind of probably most powerful argument for the fact that marketing probably shouldn't be built as a core value proposition within your business. Then ultimately, especially when we're talking in the digital space, the marketing methods, strategies, the tactics, they're always changing. There's always new platforms. There's new ways to use those things. Things like Facebook are changing constantly. So if you're investing in building that skill set and that, again, core competency within your organization, those people are always going to probably be just a step behind some organization that focuses all of their attention. So marketing agencies like ourselves that make that their core competency, their core value proposition, can be a little more agile in adjusting to those sorts of things. So again, it's not always the end-all be-all solution is to go outside, but keep that in mind as you're building marketing within your own organization, that you do have to keep those skill sets and you will have to invest in sort of staying agile against those changes in the market. And then ultimately, if you just break this down to the economics of your business, marketing in general should be a variable cost. So as you're trying to get more aggressive with growth, you should be able to expand that. You should be able to expand it dynamically. You should be able to expand it with unique skill sets in different parts of the market. You should always be testing things. And so as a result, you're going to need a different mix of talent from time to time. If you're working on content like we're talking now, you're going to need people that are good at content marketing, but you might want to go into the realm of PPC or AdWords or something like that. Obviously, you'll need that skill set. It's really hard to hire kind of a full complement of skills in order to execute your market. So again, it's something that should be variable. You should be able to turn things on and off as your business changes and your objectives change. So again, just a reminder, go ahead and put your questions in along the way, and we're going to work those in. If you're on the recording, again, here's our contact information, so you can contact me directly and ask any questions that you get as you're watching the recording. So obviously, this brings you to a dilemma. I said, hey, you need marketing. It's terribly important, and in particular, content marketing is terribly important. But at the same time, you shouldn't be building that as a core competency within your organization. So obviously, I've created a bit of a dilemma here. So startups in particular, businesses that are trying to aggressively grow beyond where they've kind of plateaued, ultimately need to depend on or will depend on the internet as a core part of their awareness and bringing new business opportunity. The internet itself is inherently content. We've already kind of talked about that and made that claim. So as a result, you're going to need content. But again, the dilemma I've created is said, hey, content marketing shouldn't be a priority or shouldn't be something that you invest in necessarily internally. So obviously that's creating a little bit of a confusion. So let me kind of try to walk through that and make my argument for why you might want to do that a little bit differently. So when we're talking about content marketing, ultimately, this is how we sort of have romanticized it and we think that it works. You sit down with your cup of espresso or cappuccino with a pretty heart on it, and you just flow out content. You write or you create video, and it all looks easy and beautiful, and it's a very artistic process. But the fact of the matter is creating consistent and frequent and valuable content is hard work. And so when you're doing the core tenets of your business and you're doing things like product development and you're doing business development or you're working the phones as a salesperson, ultimately the last thing that you have time to do is build content. Even documenting your process, depending on what your business is. If you're in financial services, documenting all the nuances of financial services or financial advice or how the stock market works or how insurance works, all the nuances of that. If you're working on, if your product is, enterprise software or software as a service, documenting the process that you go to develop the product and that sort of thing, or just talking about the problem sets that you solve with your software. If you lay that on top of your own organization, on top of your developers, on top of your financial advisors, on top of your insurance brokers, ultimately you're going to take away from the business development process. You're going to take away from the product development. And ultimately, although you think that that's something that should be easy to do and you should be able to do on a regular basis, like you need to in order to, again, have that content sort of work for you and be distributed properly and go out into the market to bring traffic and audience back to you, it doesn't really work out like that. So if you're able to do it at all, it really kind of works like this picture. Happens late at night, induced by caffeine. And again, you're usually frantically trying to maybe meet a deadline to get that email newsletter out or maybe build a script so that you can shoot a real quick video that's going to end up sort of being shoddy anyway. So ultimately, it becomes an effort of heroics versus something that can just be consistently done in a good way, in a quality way. So as a result, regardless of your best intentions, regardless of how much you pile it on your team, ultimately the reality of it is most likely you won't produce the content at all. You will rarely update your website. Even your core pages of your website will start to age and start to sort of deteriorate on you. You certainly won't be producing content on a regular basis like Google wants. You won't be refreshing content that's aged. You won't be going through that old content and finding things that are completely irrelevant, or the market has changed out from under you and made some of your content completely errant. You won't be able to keep up on all the different social channels that you should be putting content in, or taking advantage of sort of the new trends in content, making your website mobile responsive and making that content that you're producing bite-sized so that it can be consumed on a smartphone, being able to put out emails in a way that, again, can be consumed in a mobile environment, be able to use more and produce more video, which is becoming increasingly important and critical as sort of the preferred content that people are consuming. So the reality is just ultimately, you're not going to be able to do what you need to be doing as it relates to content marketing. And that's really kind of the core of where I'm trying to get at when I'm saying, hey, you need to outsource content marketing. It's not necessarily saying that you wouldn't be able to do it or couldn't be able to do it. But really, sort of my argument is, number one, you probably won't do it. And number two, it may take away from the core things that you're actually judging the performance of your people on. So if you're putting this on your sales force, or you're putting it on your developers or on your product people, again, you're probably measuring them on one performance standard. And in order to do this, they would actually be taken away from that. So ultimately, that's what creates the conflict. So let's assume that you're sort of buying into my argument at this point, and then we'll start to kind of build through when you outsource. Again, assuming you're sort of buying into the argument. If you were to outsource, this is how to kind of do it in the right way, and some of the things that you shouldn't forget about. And if you're going to engage somebody to do this, whether it's on a freelance basis or you're going to engage a full agency, depending on the size of your organization, here are some things that are really critical not to forget about this process, and to make sure that the process executes as well as you would want it to be done if you were to manage it in-house. So ultimately, this is really critical to remember. You're still the expert. So whether you go to, again, a freelancer, or you have somebody that has some expertise in the market, or you go to an agency, ultimately, you're still the expert. You're still the one who's going to have the most knowledge about your business and about the product that you've developed, the place that you are situated in the marketplace, and how you deliver. So never surrender to that sort of position, and never outsource your content marketing and just sort of go to sleep on it. And we're going to talk more specifically about what that means, but don't take your hands off the wheel, so to speak. Continue to remember that you're the expert, and you should be driving your content marketing program. Here's another really important thing, and something that makes a real differentiator in who you choose to outsource your content marketing to, if you do. First and foremost, most content shops, if you will, or places that you can get, kind of the traditional article, or you can get to produce your emails, or even video and those sorts of things, there's a tendency for those organizations to be built in one of two ways. One way, and probably the most popular, is that they just have a bullpen of general writing expertise or general content production expertise. And then depending on what your industry is and what your topic is, they just sort of, do the research, just enough research to shape it in a general way. And so what ends up happening in that model is that oftentimes you sort of have a follow the leader approach. So people are doing the general research. Where are they going to do the research? They go into the internet. And so what you end up with is a lot of content that just looks like everybody else in the market. And as a result, you're not going to do as well. Your content's not going to do as well, because, again, it's just going to be the same old, same old. And when Google looks at it, more importantly, they're going to say, hey, I've already got this indexed. So your content that you're going to be producing is sort of going to fall on deaf ears, because, again, it's just sort of a follow the leader sort of thing, and it's just redundant in a lot of ways. So the second approach, and the approach that we would advocate, is going out into the market through an agency, and this is a question you should ask them, or if you're looking for somebody on an individual basis, which I would contend is much harder to manage, again, if you don't have content marketing as a core competency in the organization, is finding the existing experts. So the people that are already in the community, that already have influence, that are already writing or creating content around your particular product set or your particular industry. And then as a result of that, you pull those people out and have them work for you. So instead of looking for generalists, you're looking for experts, and you're having those experts apply their knowledge and their content creation abilities against your particular company or your particular content problem. So ultimately, however you sort of define or start to create this content, you've got to stay in the action. You've got to you got to stay paying attention. You've got to still manage the process at some level so you have the visibility. You make sure it's consistent with your voice. It's consistent with the way you want to be positioned in the market. And then ultimately, when it goes out there, it feels like your company. It feels like a direct reflection. And so that's going to require you to stay engaged. So this is a huge mistake that we see even our clients when they start to engage with us at the beginning. And again, we see it made over and over again as a mistake out in the marketplace. But there should be a collaboration that's going on. You have to stay involved in that content production. So this means you need to stay involved in sort of guiding and leading the types of topics, the types of areas that you want to discuss, what's happening in your marketing. You want to be collaborating with whoever's actually doing the content creation to make sure they're aware of things that are occurring. Hopefully, again, they're in the market already, so they have some awareness. But again, there should be some sort of active collaboration that's going on. So we got a question here from Tom. How do you do the collaboration between the client and the organization or the agency? So the way I'll just kind of talk to the way we do it. I mean, the centerpiece, and I kind of talk about it in this slide a little bit, the centerpiece of that collaboration always has to be the editorial calendar. And so that can be facilitated in a lot of different ways. When we structure an editorial calendar at the most simple level, we often are using a Google spreadsheet so that we can collaborate and share that back and forth. And it can consist of a couple different elements in there. There's an element that is our sort of keyword marketplace or keyword ideas, and this is usually SEO driven. And so we've already done that research. We're dropping those keywords in. We're always advising the writers, and you're helping us as the client sort of keep tuned into the right keywords that we want to talk about. There's another mixture in there of just ideas. So these are concepts. These are things that are happening in the industry that are helping sort of drive the absolute topics. And then ultimately we build a bank of topics. This is a really good way to do it. And we can go into a whole session on editorial calendars, but creating a bank of topics creates some flexibility with the writer so that, again, they're not sort of forcing the issue and writing very rigidly. Again, they have a whole fluid source. Obviously, if something's happening in the market, you can kind of focus in on something. But again, it gives you some flexibility so they can kind of write what's resonating with them or maybe something they already know. So we've got another one. Nick, do you recommend hiring staff writers or hiring freelancers to produce your content? So this kind of depends on who you are in the organization. If you have a marketing department, already, and you have some people that can kind of manage this process or have some understanding or skill set around content marketing, you can organize the process, kind of like I said before, of going out into the market and finding people that are already credible in your industry. This is more in the category of sort of freelancers. So people that are already there, already active, already have influence, maybe already have a community, which is even better, already have some positioning on maybe industry specific publishers and content platforms and maybe publications and those sorts of things. So that's your kind of your freelancer, and they do it for a living, and that creates a level of professionalism that's important. If you're going to hire a staff writer, that can work as well. I don't think it works as well because generally when you're hiring staff writers, a lot of the people that you're going to see as resumes and as applicants are going to be people that are really good at writing. And that's kind of easy to see, and you can look at their portfolio and that sort of thing. But ultimately, they're going to have a huge, steep learning curve for your particular subject matter. And so they're going to have to be a really good researcher. It's probably still not going to come off as sort of as knowledgeable as maybe somebody that's already professional. And then you lose all of the opportunity that's built around potentially a professional already having an audience, already having influence, already knowing where to kind of get in there and add their voice to the mix. This is a good one. So Melissa says, how do you measure the success of content creators? Again, not to get too off topic here, but so this is a tough one as well. Ultimately, the measure of any sort of content creation process is: are you increasing your audience? Are you increasing your sort of reach into the marketplace? And that can be measured in a lot of different ways. Ultimately, traffic is a huge measure. A lot of times within Google Analytics, we'll start to create conversion metrics, places that we want them to be, places that we want them to get to. If you wanted to fill out a form, or you're trying to build an email list, or you're trying to get into a particular white paper, then you can use those as sort of, hey, are we meeting the goals? And so you can create those goals in Google Analytics and say, hey, is my content, number one, attracting them, getting me the traffic? And so that's a really easy indicator. You just watch the volume go up, hopefully. And then ultimately, are you driving them to the right places? Are they doing the things that your content wants to? And then the other sort of measure of a content creator too, and this is much harder. We'll talk about this kind of a little bit along the way. I'm going to kind of keep moving here, but if they can actually kind of get you out into the market. So when we're going to talk about, we may not get all the way to it, but content distribution is critical. So the ability to actually get out into the market in other places, places like if you're in sort of, well, actually this covers a whole bunch of different sort of situations, but if you're in the business space and you're talking to business leaders and those sorts of things, getting into All Business or getting into Huffington Post, which have a variety of different things. So being able to get into different positions is another sort of measure of success of a content creator. Ultimately, the biggest measure of any sort of content creation process is it being consumed. So is it getting traffic? Is it getting attention? Is it creating leads, if that becomes your goal? So ultimately, everything goes to, at least in most of the clients we handle, goes to lead generation. So that becomes the ultimate measure. So moving kind of along from the production process, another sort of core component in any sort of content marketing process is knowing the market itself and knowing the competition. So knowing this becomes really important for a couple different reasons. One, and probably the most important, is you should be looking into the market, looking online, doing the kind of searches that you think your customers are doing, and understanding what they're already seeing in the marketplace. And this becomes important for a couple different ways. One, you want to be somewhat consistent with expectations, because whatever Google is placing in those searches and the type of content that's around there, Google is in the business of satisfying search users. So when they display back to you content based on a search that you did, if you think that's a search that your customers do on a regular basis, then Google's showing you what potentially resonates the best with them. They want those people to be satisfied. So if you see something on that front page, you can pretty much bet that Google has already done the research for you to tell you that that's the type of content that they're looking for. So you have to be really careful. If you put in a particular keyword and you get back something, or 10 results that are completely unexpected from the way you're thinking about that keyword, the most important thing for you to understand is that you're thinking wrong. So you're using an insider term, or you have a perception of that term that's completely different from the marketplace. The reflection that Google gives back to you is what the market expects, what the market resonates with. So that means you have to do one of two things. One, you need to change your perspective on that keyword, or you need to understand that that's what they expect. And if that's not what you're serving, and that's not the type of market or the type of solution that you provide, then you're in the wrong place. And so that's really important. And a lot of people go out there, they'll do keywords, they'll build a lot of content. They may even start to rank in there. And then they find out that that keyword is associated with something completely different than you can serve the client with. And so you've ended up putting a lot of resources, spending a lot of money to build up a keyword that's completely mispositioned for what you deliver. So that's really important. Go out there and do that research, understand what your consumers are already seeing, and leverage Google's research that they've already done for you. And that kind of goes to the second point here. Google really is defining and ranking the concept. So whatever that keyword is, that's the concept. And that's the way, again, that you need to be thinking about that. So we kind of get into this situation Whereas insiders, we kind of know too much, and outsiders are maybe using the wrong words. But at the end of the day, the outsiders are your consumers. So I equate this to like learning a foreign language. You need to learn the foreign language of your consumer, of your customer, because a lot of times it's vastly different than the type of terms that you're using. So this is really important research. We don't do any content marketing campaign or engagement without doing a lot of research as to what the language of the customer is. The other thing you want to do is you want to know what your competitors are doing. And there's a lot of proprietary tools that we use to give you deep insight into exactly what the competitor is doing. And much like Google, you can leverage your competitors and you can kind of look to see if they're professional at what they're doing and they really kind of know what they're doing. It's sort of easy to sort that out. And the ones that know what they're doing, you leverage those learnings. So if there's certain things that they're paying a lot of money for, PPC and that sort of thing, you can bet that they have to achieve an ROI. So there's some things that they've found out. So doing the competitive research can really help you figure out, one, do you want to be competing with them at all? Because sometimes that's the opinion you'll come to because they've just sort of priced you out of the market. Or if you are going to compete with them, that you make sure that you compete in a good way. And that's really kind of the last point, is you're looking for those gaps. You're looking for the gaps in the market where no one's talking about it, but they should, because consumers are looking for it. We just found this. We did some research for some attorneys and personal injury attorneys in particular. And one of the things that they're really interested in is Social Security disability claims, and they can help their customers with that. And we found that in particular regions that they were serving of the country, there was literally no competition. And so we were able to insert ourselves in. There was another one that was in a different area of the country. There was a lot of competition for those terms, in particular around PPC. But the consumers, this is where we found an awesome gap that created a lot of monetization opportunities. Was the way the consumers were talking about Social Security disability was entirely different from the way that the attorneys were talking about it. And so we had a bunch of attorneys that we saw in the marketplace that were advertising on sort of insider language. And then we found all of this traffic sitting over here, which were actually consumers putting in the searches, and absolutely no one was advertising. So again, you're kind of looking for those gaps in the market. The marketplace analysis is terribly critical, and if you don't do that, then you're missing a lot of opportunities. So just jumping in there and producing content is just definitely not the way to go about that. So hopefully I've kind of painted a picture that, ultimately, regardless of how professional that outsourced content creation effort or firm or agency is, or freelancer, you still need to kind of lead and coach that editorial process. So some of these things you need to do on your own. You need to do a little market research, take a look at what's out there, and pay attention to what's happening with your competitors and those sorts of things, and build a game plan and continue to lead and coach that no matter how much your agency is doing for you. And so, again, that leadership position always goes back to you're the expert. You're in the market, you're delivering the product, you're making tweaks on your product, you're figuring out, again, how to deliver that product into the market. You're talking to customers. Customers are telling you things. All of that feedback needs to come back to your content marketing. So even though you may not be placing content marketing inside your organization as a core competency, you might not even, for some organizations, we're completely displacing their marketing department. They don't even have a marketing department. We're working directly with the sales folks, or we're working directly with their product development to be the marketing. So they're in the mix. They're understanding, again, the tweaks they're making on their product, the position they want to put in the market, feedback from the customers. All that's kind of coming over to us and our experts, our writers, our content creators, and then we're pushing out a good marketing product that is, again, following the game plan that's being developed in-house. So never give up that leadership position. Take your hands off the wheel. We do have some clients, and believe it or not, they're the most frustrating clients that push all of their content marketing out to us and never talk to us. So as a result, we obviously, in our best efforts, we're always making sure that we're in the market. We're making sure that we're hiring people that understand the market. And so they're getting a good product, but they're not getting as good a product as they could. We can't always position the content as unique as maybe their product is. And so it's really becomes important to, again, understand that you're still in that leadership position, that leadership role. Here's another big one that a lot of people sort of miss and forget about is regardless of, again, outsourcing this effort. And hopefully your content marketing agency or freelancer or whatever is doing a bit of this promotion process, but you still need to be the head promoter. So let's talk a little bit about promotion and why that's important. So you can publish content all day long, but the web has become so big and so noisy. If you're not actively pushing that content into the market, if you're not distributing, if you're not doing content distribution and you're not doing content promotion, then it's just not gonna get in front of the eyeballs. It's not going to get enough traffic. It's not going to get enough density of attention to actually move forward. And so again, this is a distribution exercise, just like whether you're talking about traditional magazines or newspapers. In order for that content to get in front of people, it obviously had to have distribution. On internet, it's the same thing. There has to be a distribution mechanism. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. A lot of that has to do with social media. So again, as soon as your content gets created, you're pushing it out through social media channels. Hopefully, you have your own social media channels. And again, you've already created some audiences around there that, again, you can push it in front of that audience. That audience can then continue to share it and distribute it, and you can get some natural, organic distribution on the content. Google looks at that. They're taking in what they call social signals, and they're paying attention to that sort of activity to figure out whether or not the content is interesting, is it relevant, is it rankable, and those sorts of things. So you got to make sure that you do that. So we've got a question here from Tony. So the type of social media channels should you be using? So this kind of depends. I mean, we've got a broad range of people, it looks like, on here. As far as the industry, I can kind of just detect a little bit from some of your signups. But let me kind of talk about it in a general way, I guess. It depends a little bit on whether you're business consumer or versus business to business. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, it's not different. You're ultimately marketing to individuals, but there is a little bit of difference in there. You know, business and consumer, this is things like financial services where you're dealing with individual customers. When you're in that kind of marketplace, each individual that you encounter is a decision maker. They're making their own decisions. Yeah, maybe there's a spouse or something involved, but generally they're making their own decision. They can make those decisions quickly. They don't need a lot of data a lot of times, and they don't necessarily need a lot of information. And so there's certain channels that are good at that. Or good for distributing your content in because it gives them just enough information so they can go to that transaction or they can become a lead, that sort of thing. B2B is slightly different in the sense that those decisions are usually made in a collective of some sort. So they're generally gathering content. This is where content becomes really important. We've got a lot of enterprise software companies, again, where decisions are made in committee and those sorts of things. So they're gathering up information. You have to have content that like PDFs and downloadable white papers or maybe slide shares or something like that, where they can actually take away a piece of content, share it internally in a collaborative way, and collectively make a decision. So those are kind of two different ways to think about it. And so as a result, where those people hang out as far as choosing your social channels are a little bit different. So generally in both cases, Facebook, believe it or not, is a good place where you should be distributing your content. Again, you should have, in this case, you should have a fan page so that you have a platform on which to distribute, and that platform should have you should be doing your own efforts to make sure that there's an additional audience there. So you have a website audience, probably you have an email marketing audience, you should have a Facebook audience. So when you push things in there, again, it gives a little traction and there's some sharing and that sort of thing. Twitter, Google Plus is still important. Obviously Google has made some overtones that it's sort of maybe sunsetting Google Plus, but we're still seeing that stuff that's shared in Google Plus is getting some sort of ranking factor. So I think Google is probably going to change what Google Plus looks like, but it's still important to kind of be in there and push your content. If you're, again, B2B, where there's some collective decision making going on, LinkedIn is obviously a channel. LinkedIn as an ad platform is very young, and so becomes, kind of hit or miss whether or not that works on a paid basis, but you should probably be creating some sort of activity in there. And then certainly if any part of your business model or any part of your business requires recruiting on a regular basis, that's a great channel to be in, because for the best of my opinion, it's pretty much a ghost town unless you're looking for a job. So if that's a little bit of your audience, then definitely should consider that. Also, we've had a lot of success, and you have to kind of do this and have the right kind of content, but in StumbleUpon and Reddit and those sorts of channels. Also, when we're talking about distribution, just kind of send this just a one step further and talk a little bit deeper about distribution than I was planning on. But to kind of answer the question, maybe, is there's other places besides just social you should be thinking about. So if you're talking about personal finance, there's like a very robust blogger community. So getting in that community, being able to publish on different blogs or different community platforms or different websites that's sort of community oriented. So if you're personal finance, you should create a strategy for that. If you're in technology, like a lot of folks that we work with, there's some kind of unique communities that you got to figure out: D-Zone, Hacker News, Reddit, and those sorts of things. And again, there's some strategies to do that. But look for other places where, again, your customers are, and probably those platforms have more of an audience than you have, because that's terribly important. Look for pockets where they have more traffic, they have more eyeballs, they have more audience, and see if you can sort of take some of that or attract some of that attention back to you and build some of that. We have a question from David about sponsored content. So sponsored content is kind of an interesting thing. There's a lot of places to do this. So when I'm talking about sponsored content, you're talking about popular, usually news sites or sites like BuzzFeed and those sorts of things, where you can distribute sponsored content into their platform itself. So you can kind of get injected in there. And if you want to look examples of this, again, you can kind of look on Huffington Post. You can look on a lot of the major news sites. BuzzFeed certainly has it. And you'll see these little blocks of content where it says, oh, like this content or related content or whatever. And you'll see things like Outbrain or Taboola as a little branding to the side. And so essentially what that's doing is you're paying to take your content and inject it as related content on a relevant basis. Kind of works like AdWords. It's supposed to be contextual, and to squirt that around in popular news sites or popular sort of cult sites, so that if you have relevant content, it gets in there and potentially you get traffic back from it. Again, this varies all over the board as far as how successful it is. It can be really successful in grabbing traffic and grabbing eyeballs, but the content has to be sort of custom developed for that strategy. And then depending on your industry, it can be more or less successful, but you definitely need to, at the end of that, so once you drag them back to your site, you definitely need to have a strategy around how to acquire them as a regular audience. Because if you're not doing that, then you're paying for those eyeballs, and they're usually really quick. They flash in and out of your site. You get a high bounce rate. But if you've got a sort of a sticky strategy, you've got the right kind of content, then that can be productive. It can certainly get you tons of traffic. All right, so again, just to hammer this home, you've got to be the biggest fan of your content. So if you've got social channels or you've got an email list, regardless of whether or not if you are outsourcing this, don't just kind of leave your hands off of this process either. Obviously, the content marketing organization or whoever you're outsourcing it should be doing some level of promotion and distribution, and that should be part of your program if you're hiring someone to do that. So make sure that it is. But at the same time, you should be doing some of your own internal promotion. So get it out on your email list if you have an email list. If you have your own contacts, then you should be sending that out. Your salespeople should be using the content and distributing it. So inside of your organization, again, continue to take a leadership position, and your leadership position should extend all the way to promoting it internally as well, because again, that's going to get you the most ROI. So the most traction that you can get and the most promotion that you can get on this content is really going to drive up the ROI on what you're paying. So ultimately, having said all of that, we're kind of getting to the end, and we're going to open this up to questions. We've got about 15 minutes, so we're right on time. But ultimately, with all of this advice and all of this kind of thought process into whether or not you should be doing content production in-house or you should be doing it outside, At the end of the day, the most important thing, and I talk about this all the time, is to be doing content in a consistent and frequent way. So ultimately, you've got to do the work in order to get the results. And so what is the work? Here's my quick checklist of things that you and your organization, regardless of your industry, regardless of your audience or business size, that you should ultimately be trying to do as it relates to content. So you should be doing blogging or some form of regular website content production. So again, blogging is kind of an old term and has some sort of mixed connotations around it, but it's not an amateur process. Blogging is now a very professional thing. The content that's on your blog platform or on the portion of your websites that's producing regular content updates and news is a professional thing. The quality that's expected when people come to these pieces of content, whether it's not just writing, we're talking about video, we're talking about images, we're talking about slide presentations, PDFs, downloadables. Again, the content itself is becoming very multimedia, if you will. So there's a high expectation of what's going to be on a blog. So now when somebody goes to your blog or goes to that portion of your website, they're expecting a lot. So you should certainly be doing that process, and you should be doing it on a regular basis. At the very least, you should be doing it once a week. Again, you'll find, and this is without exception, the more you do it, the more traffic you'll have. So the more frequently and the more consistently they're pushing out content, just ultimately and directly is correlated to how much traffic you'll get. We talked about this a little bit. There should be a mixture of photos and video. So the content itself should have a mixture to it. You should be producing videos. Those videos should be bite size. Again, a lot of your consumption, if you look at your web analytics, you're probably going to find, and this is almost, again, across the board, probably somewhere between 40 and 60% of your traffic is now on smartphones or mobile devices. So again, everything needs to be bite size. Photos need to be sort of interesting and compelling, definitely not stock photo-y. So you have to kind of be good about that. And then again, video, very one topic focused and bite size. Distribution, I can't overemphasize the importance of content distribution. So getting your content beyond your own website, whether that means you're publishing on other platforms, on other industry publications, you're distributing it through social media, you're promoting it, you're doing potentially sponsored content. You've got to get that content to move. It's really an active process. If you think about your own content, consumption, you're probably doing more reviewing of streams of information versus actually going and searching. This is particularly on your mobile device. When you sit down or you stand in line and you take a quick look at your mobile phone or whatever, you're probably going to Facebook or you're going to Instagram or Twitter or you're going to a particular site, and you're literally kind of thumbing or flipping through a stream of information, and it's whatever comes to you. It's not necessarily something you go and actively acquire like a search. So that's changing. So if you're not doing the content distribution, you're not getting into those streams, which are critically important. This is another one talked about a little bit, really hard to do. I won't undersell how difficult this is, but this is something we try to achieve. We try to 3-to-1 publish OffSite. So again, your website audience, depending on how much content that you've done and you've created and how good you've been with your strategy, and it probably hasn't been a lot, especially if you're interested at it at this point and you're on this webinar. You don't have a lot of audience there. You don't have a lot of traffic. You don't have a lot of community built around your website. However, there are places that you can gain access to and you can publish content on that are talking about your business and talking about your services. PR helps with this as well. But you can get into larger audiences and draw their attention back and start to build your audience with that. So if you're publishing content, try as best you can to publish 3 times as much outside of your platform and outside of your website, again, if possible. So that, again, depending on your industry, you could be blogging, you could be publishing on things like Huffington Post and those sorts of things. So again, try to publish as much content offsite as possible. And then this is, again, not I mean, it's a big part of content marketing, but we haven't talked about it a lot, so it may seem a little bit out of the mix, but terribly critical. If you're talking about stickiness of that traffic and keeping those people in your mix and becoming your audience and your community, you need to have email capture and you need to be doing email marketing. So if you're not getting a direct sale or you're not actually generating a lead, the secondary action to everything on your site should be, hey, here's a reason to give me your email. I'm going to provide you something. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to promise you something in the future. I'm going to give you a unique amount of a bit of information or a unique type of content. Again, if you give me your email. So there should be either a primary or secondary call to action should be always an email acquisition. And then ultimately, once you get those emails, don't let them go cold. You need to have an active email marketing campaign. And so there's a whole variety. Again, that's a whole nother webinar that we can get into what you should be doing with those once you acquire them. But this is where most of your money can be made or should be made. Most of our clients, the majority of revenue is not coming in that direct visit. It's coming from that repeated visit, whether we're driving that via PPC or remarketing campaigns, or, and this is the most of the case, or the email marketing. We're capturing them on the list, and then we have the ability to market to them over time. And then when the timing is right for their decision or the timing is right for their transaction, they will know about us. We have built a relationship, trust, and credibility, and they will come to us in that moment. So most of the revenue that we generate for clients actually comes as a result of the email marketing campaign. Okay, so we've covered, again, why content marketing is important, all of the different reasons that you should be doing it. Again, whether you come down on my side of the fence saying that you should outsource it or you want to keep it in-house, that's fine. Either way, we've talked in length about how to do it right and the type of things that you should be doing. So now it's time to ask questions. So again, if you're on the recording, here's all my contact information. Even if you're here live and you're shy or whatever, and you don't want to ask the question, or you think your question is more specific to you than the audience, then here's all my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me, and I will answer all of those questions that come to me, even through those other channels. So let's take a look at the questions that we haven't maybe answered at this point. So no one knows, so I don't know, it's really a statement versus a question, but no one knows our business like us. So it kind of covered this a lot, throughout the presentation. There's no question that you know the business. That's why I reiterate over and over, there should be some sort of collaboration process. There should be leadership in the content marketing. My whole point is, again, the chances of you hiring people that do content marketing professionally, or you hiring marketing people that have enough understanding of digital marketing to actually do the execution is probably slim to none. So what ends up happening in most organizations, again, is you pile this on as an additional duty on someone else, probably your sales department or maybe your product development. And again, it's misaligned with their performance objectives. And so it either doesn't get done, or if it does get done or it does get attention, and probably even if it gets done well, then it's going to take away from the core responsibilities you want them to be doing, landing deals, closing deals, those sorts of things, building new product, making tweaks, and that sort of thing. So just more or less my argument is it can be horribly distracting. And if you are going to get a professional that can do it really well, then you're probably paying too much for it, and you can create some efficiency. Any advice for hiring a writer? So again, hiring writers, freelancers, agency, obviously that's what we do. So, I can give you a whole litany of questions, but the core of all of these, when you're kind of trying to make the selection or you're trying to outsource it, really gets down to the focus of, can they deliver you expertise that's somewhat comparable, or without a lot of spin up time, is knowledgeable enough to look and feel like your voice. And so that's kind of the most critical part. If you're going to hire a writer, make sure that they show you that they've written in your marketplace. They should be able to show you examples, be able to show you portfolio and those sorts of things. If you're hiring an agency, sometimes they can show you portfolio if they've been in your industry already. So that's easy for them to do. But it's also easy for them to do, and probably easier than it is for you to actually go out into the market, vet those people, do the due diligence, and hire somebody that's already influential and bring them in to help you on your particular account. So that's kind of the suggestions there. And it looks like there's a couple more questions, but it looks like I want to be, again, careful of your guys' time. About 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here so that we close on time. Again, just a reminder, whether you're on the recording or live and you have any questions, you should be looking at all my contact information. I love to teach. I love to make sure that we're sharing all the knowledge that we have in here. So again, feel free to reach out to me through any of these channels. We'll get connected and answer all those questions. Again, thanks for joining us today on this webinar. And keep tuned. You're probably already on our email list. There will be other webinars, and we'll go into a lot of those other things that we really weren't able to cover today. So we can, our next one, I think, is going to be about designing a website for lead generation. So if that's interesting to you, look for that next one. And of course, email marketing is something on the horizon as well. So again, stay tuned to future webinars, and thanks for joining us today.